Hey there, and welcome back. I'm Dr. Vince Leone, executive producer and co-host of the Practice Builders podcast. With my partner in crime, Dr. Kyle Pankonin, we deliver proven strategies to help you grow fast, specialize with confidence, and build profitable staff-run practices. Let's go ahead and dive into today's episode now. Hello and welcome to the Practice Builders podcast. My name is Dr. Vince Leone.
And I am Dr. Kyle Pankonin, and we're grateful you're joining us today. I think we got a great topic that Dr. Leone is going to introduce for us.
We're calling it Scaling Smart, the right time to add staff, systems, and or technology. And this was a topic that Dr. Pankonin came up with, and I thought it was very timely and appropriate. You know, our doctors continue to grow at specialized practice, and so that's always not really a struggle. It's just it's a decision-making process. And so what we want to talk about today, and we'll go over each bucket: systems, which will cover obviously, you know, new patients and processing, et cetera, staff and technology. And so we're going to talk about, you know, what are the triggers or the signs where you need to, that should be telling you, hey, so that I don't stunt my growth, I need to invest in this area of my practice to continue to move forward and up the ladder in terms of the overall practice. So let's go ahead and dive into this. We'll start with staff. I think, you know, building a great staff is a critical component, especially with what we do with niches, right? Because our whole model is staff, systems, and technology is going to do the bulk of the patient care, and the doctor focuses on the evaluation, midterm, and final exam. So let's talk a little bit about staff and Dr. Pankonin. Now, when we had like 10 techs and 15 staff or something, it was kind of like herding cats at one point. But Dr. Pankonin has really built a phenomenal staff, and so why don't you start us off there, Doc, and give your thoughts on, you know, what are some warning signs or triggers where you are like, okay, I need to add staff and I need to add this type of staff person?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that doctors need to get in their big picture idea of their practice is doctors really need to, too many chiropractors have too many hats on.
Yes.
They're taking on too many roles, and you really, to be the best doctor and to make the most efficient and valued use of your time, you need to be my wife calls me the master delegator.
Oh, boom, I love it.
She doesn't always say that most affectionately, but but anyway. No, what are most chiropractors good at? Well, should be really good at examination. You should be good at your clinical skills of exam, adjusting, and doing report of findings, and, you know, communicating with patients. Most of the rest of the stuff should be delegated. In other words, your documentation, not that you don't do it as part of your documentation, but you should have staff in your room helping you with documentation. You should have staff that should be trained how to take your x-rays. You should have staff that can run all of your therapies for you, staff that can do your billing and insurance if you're an insurance practice for you, and also do things like marketing and behind the scenes stuff. Not that you maybe don't oversee some of that stuff as a doctor and know what's going on, but if you're adjusting the patients, you're doing all the updating, you're doing all the documentation, you're doing the x-rays, you're doing hooking up some of the therapies, you maybe even working in some in billing, you're just wearing too many hats, and you're never going to grow your practice.
And you're going to be exhausted in the process.
You're going to be exhausted. I literally know chiropractors that are one man or one woman shows. They do everything.
Crazy.
And they just try to keep their overhead really, really low, which they are probably, but they never really can grow their practice because you can't see very many patients when you're wearing all of those hats. So
They are the bottleneck in that situation.
They are the bottleneck. And either they don't trust anybody else to do it, or they're afraid to commit to spending the money it takes to find and retain good staff, whatever the case might be, but they're holding themselves back because they're wearing too many hats. I guess that's one of the biggest things that I see in clinical practice. I'd like
Yeah.
to get your thoughts on a couple of those things too, Doc.
Yeah, and I would give the doctors an exercise that they can do is do a time audit. You can do it for a day, you can do it for a week. I think that's a week would be plenty of time. And I just want you to list everything that you do while in the practice, right? And then what you want to do is figure out, well, what is your time worth? And then maybe what do you want it to be worth? And you could take your total number of hours worked and divide that by the amount of revenue that you make. But if say you're making $100 an hour, you're worth 300 an hour or 500 an hour, whatever, somewhere in there, and any task or activity that you can pay someone, say $20 an hour or $25 an hour, you're losing money. You're losing money and you are the bottleneck. So what you want to do is make your list of activities that you do on a daily basis. And what I want you to do beside each one is it a $1 sign, a low value task, or is it a $3 sign, a high value task? And then also put, does it give you energy or does it take energy away? In other words, do you enjoy doing it or is it a slog? And that's going to very quickly show you which tasks you need to delegate, right? So that's the first step. And then the second step is, well, then who's going to take it on? In our model, again, staff is going to be putting patients on the decompression table, off the table, doing laser, doing shockwave, et cetera. So if you're doing that would be the first thing I would be looking at is if you're hooking patients up on the table, doing laser, that's the first thing. And like if you have an office manager and a front desk, that's the first hire that I would make and get yourself out of those activities in the practice because it's just going to run you ragged. And like Dr. Smith, one of our great clients, is just going through this right now, and he just hired his first tech, and you could see it on his face how joyful he is now, how much more he's enjoying. He's been in practice for 30 some years, so he was kind of at the tail end of his career. Now he's loving practice, right? It's fun again. Why? Because he gets to focus on what he does best, being a doctor. So that would be an exercise I'd recommend that you do in terms of evaluating your staff and do you need more. You know, at minimum, I think you need to have an office manager / operations manager, right? Someone that's going to take care of all the admin in the office. You have a rock star at the front desk. That's your receptionist. And then you have a tech. That's the bare bones to get to, say, 50, 60K a month. And then after that, you add another tech, right? So if you have 2 decompression tables and 2 lasers, you need a tech for each. One tech can do 2 tables. One tech can do 2 lasers if they're robotic, if they're unattended. If they're not, then, then that's a little, it's going to slow them down. So I would just be thinking in that regard, if you don't have a tech, that's the first hire to get you off of the therapies. And then as you scale, you just figure out, how many techs do I need per piece of equipment or, multiple pieces of equipment, and then go from there.
Only final thing I'll say on this particular part is that most doctors really get bogged down and dislike documentation. And I have found that having one of your techs in the room with me when I'm treating patients. So my techs take the patients in the room. They do all the subjective updates of the patients, all the regions of complaint, all the OPQ, RST, all the questions you ask for each area. And I come in the room, read what they say or what is down, and then we do the objective analysis. And I'm just dictating verbally out loud what my findings are, and they're putting them in the computer, and the assessment, the diagnosis, all that stuff, and the plan, what we're doing for treatment. So by the time I'm done seeing the patient, the SOAP note is basically done. And all I have to do at the end of the morning or end of the day is quickly review the notes and sign off on them. So if otherwise, I know docs that are going home and spending an hour or
Hours.
2 hours in the evening just, doing documentation because they're doing it all themselves.
I
That is
just
not,
saw a Facebook post in one of the chiropractic business groups talking about this exact thing. And this is a doctor that has two other associates and a bunch of staff, and he's spending hours on documentation. I'm like, why does he not have a scribe? So the individual that Dr. Pankonin is referring to is what he calls his scribe. And that's one of, when you get to a certain level, that is such a smart hire, right? Someone that can be your kind of right hand person in the room. Because think about this, like the two scenarios. One, you're the doctor in the room and you're treating the patient, or sorry, you're examining the patient. So you do a test and you go to the paperwork and make a note and you do a test and you're back and forth, back and forth. Um, Versus you quickly and efficiently do your testing and you're just calling it out, right? And the staff members doing, I mean, it just looks so much more efficient and professional. And oh, by the way, it saves you a ton of time.
yeah. And the final thing I'll say that is it gives the patient a little more of the wow experience because when you're spitting out ranges of motion, orthopedic tests, neurological tests, you're sending out words they've never heard before, at least bigger words. And they always say, think, wow, I never heard those words before, or that was an incredible exam, or never heard a doctor do that before. So it enhances your image in the patient's mind, gives them more confidence.
That
So
100%. And we talk about that. And Dr. Kyle in the program has, what we call our world-class exam training. And if patient's going to invest 3 grand, 5 grand, 7 grand, whatever the number is, they expect a unique experience, right? They don't expect if they're going to invest, typically, you're going to do your copay, $20, et cetera, and you're kind of just a number in the office versus having a real patient experience that's unique and exceptional. All this goes towards enrollment, right? Whether someone wants to invest with you.
100% on that. And I've seen that. That's been my secret sauce for many years too.
Don't tell anybody.
Oh, uh-oh, the word's out. No.
Secret sauce. I love it. Okay, so that's staff. I think anything else you want to cover on that?
No, I think
Okay,
we hit it good.
good stuff. Good stuff. Systems. So on systems, Doc, let's I would cover systems in terms of like how many new patients you're able to process and in what manner. So why don't you kick us off there?
Again, the new patient processing, one of my roadblocks in early practice and patient processing was my original clinic. I had 960 square feet. I had a little tiny waiting room area, and I literally was getting to the point where the waiting room was full and people were standing just in the hallway outside of a treat room because I had nowhere to put them. That was one of the things that showed me, whoa, I needed to make the hard decision of it. If I can't grow anymore because I'm completely out of space. So that was in 2000 when I started practice. By 2010, I made the hard but right decision to build a new clinic in my hometown here. And there was two empty lots on Main Street. So I approached the city and I offered to buy the lots, and they said you can have them for $1. So not
Good
not
deal.
that that happens very often, but
No.
the point being is there was a capacity blockage where
Mm.
I was not able to process more patients because I didn't have room for more staff. I didn't have room, a big enough waiting area, and I didn't have enough capacity to handle all the new patients coming. So we built new, which then we built nearly 2,000 square feet, doubled what we had. And I was then able to there was an explosion almost right away when I did that because I had a capacity blockage that the only way to solve it was I needed more room,
Yeah.
period.
Physical space.
Needed physical space. And the other area I would talk about that I think blocks a lot of doctors is what we talked about. You hear struggling to process the volume of patients or the demand you have and new patients and stuff, it's usually you're just understaffed or you're underutilizing staff to help you in that process.
Mm-hmm.
And so when a new patient comes in, for instance, like I said, I have a staff person that literally takes them into a consult room, digs into their history, asks all the right questions to them, does some preliminary exam stuff like scanning their feet, and takes them into an exam room then. So all I really have to do before I go in the room is just quickly pull up on my computer, review their case, and walk in and ask a few pertinent follow-up questions, introduce myself, things like that. And then we're off to the races. We're going to the exam. So I can process a new patient uh, pretty efficiently. As soon as I come in the room, within a few moments, my staff comes right into the room and I'm dictating their exam, their assessment, their plan, what we're going to do for treatment to them. So it is efficient and we can process, a new patient in, 15 minutes pretty quickly in most instances. So those are things that are going to hold you back as far as systems if you don't have the right people in place, enough people, or enough physical space are some of the things that I've seen over the years that really held me back at times.
Yeah. And I think in addition to that, I would say your scheduling system needs to be efficient in a sense that, I would have set new patient slots, either 1 or 2 in the morning and 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and they could be for day 1 or day 2. Now, if you always do a full day 1, which would be consult, exam, and report of findings, then you'd probably need to expand. But if you're going to do consistently day 1, day 2s, you can usually schedule new patient slots at a half an hour. And so, and those are interchangeable, right? So if say you had a 10 to 10:30 and an 11:30 to 12 new patient slot in the morning, that can be a day 1 or day 2. So your staff can schedule a new patient for their first day or their report of findings, because you really want to get your ROFs in the next day, if possible. Because here's the thing, and it's like if you're going to do X-rays or MRI or review your findings, I mean, you need some time to figure out if you can help the patient, right? So it's nice to, schedule a day 2 the next day, but you need to have the capacity within your schedule. So that's the first thing I would say on the scheduling, because it makes a big deal. Your staff needs to know clearly, when are our new patient slots? When can I and can't I schedule particular types of patients? And then in addition to that, when you have decompression and laser and shockwave, and you have texts that go along with it, those need to be separate schedules. In other words, like your chiropractic schedule, it should be on a totally different color, totally different line, because that's what I saw with another client. It's like his one schedule, everything was in there, decomp, chiro, laser, and so it was just a jumbled mess. And so you need to be able to have separate schedules for each modality, especially, and ideally you have a tech running that. So they have, Cindy Luhu, your laser tech, she has a schedule, and then patients can be put on that. You have your schedule, which is your chiro and your new patient slots. Decompression has a schedule. And that way it doesn't all overlap, right? And so the patients can be processed efficiently. Everyone, just keep in mind, everyone thinks that they are so busy. And this could be someone that is an executive, it could be someone that's retired. Everyone thinks that they're busy. And so why is that important? Because they want an efficient process. They want to be seen on time. They want to have an excellent exam. They want to be told what the heck's wrong and can you help? And then they want to be on their way and they want to go about the rest of their day. So, the days of waiting for an hour or, appointments running long, like that just doesn't cut it in a high value practice. You need to put as much effort into honing your patient processing systems so that people have a unique and exceptional experience. So I think that falls into systems for sure. And these things aren't solved in a day, but you could say, hey, look, in quarter 3 or quarter 2 or whatever, but give it some room to work on, right? In quarter 3, we're going to focus and we're going to make our patient processing efficient. And this is how we're going to do it. These are the steps, and we're going to do this over a 3-month time period so that when we're done, now that big chunk in our office is optimized.
One thing I would add to that, great. That's spot on, all good stuff. One thing is one of the things that most doctors are familiar with cluster booking, but most doctors think, well, my schedule's not completely full. I have plenty of room to grow. But most patients, what do you see? They want to come in at certain times of the day, the peak demand times. So that's going to be usually early morning or right at the end of the day or maybe close to noon hour, that type thing. You need to figure out how you can get more people in those peak demand times. And, the middle of the morning when it's 10 o'clock or something, well, you're maybe not plump full at that time. Well, there's a reason, because nobody wants those slots unless they're retired. So if you want to
And that's when you
grow,
put your new patient times.
that's when you put your new patient times. Exactly right. So that's when most of the time we do new patients at 11 o'clock in the morning. And the early morning stuff, like this morning, I started treating patients at about 6:30. From 6:30 till about 10, it was just a stream, patient after patient after patient. And sometimes in the 6:30 to 7:30 range, I mean, I'll have 14, 15 patients scheduled in that time frame, but they're all, and so we're off to the races. But if you want to grow, you have to figure out, how can I get more people in and processed efficiently in those peak demand times? And you got to figure out what's blocking you from doing that, whether it's staff, equipment, space, all those things come into play.
Hey there, it's Dr. Vince. And if you're getting value from this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you know another doc who's ready to grow their practice, share this with them. It might be exactly what they need right now. Thank you in advance. And now back to the show.
Or you're talking too much.
Yeah.
Doctors love to talk. And it used to kind of drive me nuts when I listened to my dad. Oh, it's raining again. It's like, oh my God, I can't talk about the weather anymore. It's like, dude, just get patients in, treat them, and get them on their way. It's like it serves no one to yak and yak about nonsense. Patients aren't there to, look, if you lead the relationship that way, that's what they're going to expect. If you lead it efficiently, get them in, treat them, get them out, then that's what they will expect. So you have to be the leader in that aspect as well. But if you're spending 15 minutes with a patient on a routine adjustment visit, that's too long.
One of the things I used to do early in practice is I actually put a little timer that was set. It would buzz I think it was every 6 or 7 minutes. So that when it buzzed, I'm like, okay, I knew it trained me. It was like a little shock collar
That's a
almost.
smart idea.
And it trained me though that, okay, I need to get on an efficient schedule, because it's easy to spend 10, 15 minutes with a patient if you're talking. And this was like, okay, this trained me. I got to get more efficient. And now I almost have this internal system in my head. I've done it so many years. It's like, I know basically how much time I've spent with a patient, and I know when it's time to get moving and get rolling on. And that whole thing about talking to patients, yeah, you can't be rude and disrespectful, but you know what? Patients really could care less about you as a doctor. They don't care about what you did over the weekend or
Nope.
how's your family, or they don't care. They
They
only
care
are
about
there for what
themselves.
they're there for. And
100%.
so,
And by the way, the best patients, the ones that want to get in and get out, they're going to be incredibly frustrated if they're sitting, waiting, looking at you, talking about BS. And they're like, he's not even treating the patient. All they're doing is yakking. And it's just a bad look. It's a bad kind of way to get into doing things. I really like that idea with that timer. That would be a really simple, if you're guilty of yakking too much and you're taking more than 10, 15 minutes, or 10's too long in my mind. I think 6, 7 minutes is totally fine. But if that's you and you're guilty of that and you want to see more, see more volume and grow your practice, that little timer thing, I think, would be a great little cheap little tool to keep you on track.
Absolutely. I can't speak of that higher. That really trained me to get more efficient. And then initially, I couldn't believe how quickly, 4 or 5 or 6 minutes went by.
Right.
But now it's like 4 or 5 or 6 minutes. I've spent more than enough time with this patient. It's time to move on. So and you're delivering just as good, if not better service than you ever were. It's just you're doing it more efficiently.
100%. Okay, let's move on to tech. So technology. So this is your equipment, right? So when do you need to get a new table? When do you need to get another laser? When do you get that type of stuff? So I would say on tables, in our system, one table can probably process about 5 to 7 new starts per month in our system. So, if you're and to be totally honest, most doctors aren't doing more than 5 to 7 new starts per month. So, your one table you should be able to generate 20 to 25,000 a month off one table. Now if you are, getting patients backed up where they're waiting for decompression and you're kind of around that 5 new starts, that's, when you get people waiting to get on the table, it's one of two things. One, they're not scheduled properly. In other words, your staff is scheduling them too close together, or they're trying to cluster. You can't cluster book decompression, right? I mean, it's a set time frame, 20, 25 minutes, whatever it is. It should be, a 30-minute slot. So you can process 2 patients in 1 hour, right? So 20-minute treatment time, 20, 25, 2 to 3 minutes to hook them up, 2 to 3 minutes to take them off. Okay. So you should be able to process 2 patients per hour, per table. Okay. So there's your metric. If you're not able to process 2 patients per hour per table, then look at scheduling. If you're able to do that, but you're still getting people waiting, then you need to start thinking about another table. But don't let 40 grand or 50 grand inhibit your growth, and scare you off, because, that's a small price to pay to add another table. Now you can open things up. Schedule is opened up. And again, one tech member can handle 2 tables. So that's kind of my barometer on tables. What are your thoughts on that, Doc? And then maybe look at laser too.
Yeah, I have 2 tables, and that we were under capacity blockages because of what I talked about, the peak demand times. Even though you can't cluster book, but those people for those like decompression, those people though that are on decompression programs, they still have certain times of the day when they want to get in, which are usually the peak demand times. So we just found we need to have at least 2 tables so that we can process, 4 decompression treatments in an hour, and that reduced a lot of our blockages that we were having.
Yeah.
And just made us much more efficient, because we actually asked our staff when we built our new addition onto our new clinic, what do we need? And we need another decompression table. That was the very first thing they told us. So we invested in the equipment, and it was a good move, because we're able to more efficiently process and creates more revenue, and you don't have patients that are waiting. Like we said, they don't want to wait. So you got to be very efficient at processing those. And things like laser, if you have robotic laser, which we do, we have 5 of those. And we started with 1, and we've just gradually added as time went by. But as I've said in many talks before elsewhere, that if you realize that the laser, every patient that walks through the door is a potential laser candidate, you can grow a laser part of your practice very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get to a point where you'll need, most of our doctors that get their first laser within 6 months to 12 months realize they need a second laser.
They need a second laser.
And so when that laser is getting utilized at least probably 70% of the day, it's probably time for a second laser.
Yeah, I like that benchmark 70-75%. Like if your schedule for decompression or laser or shockwave gets up to about 75%, that's the time to be thinking about a new piece of equipment.
Yeah. And I know some doctors they want to add more equipment. They want another decompression table, or they want another laser, they want another shockwave, whatever the case might be. And they physically do not have the room in their clinic to do that.
Yeah.
And so that's where hard decisions come into. Can you build onto your existing location? Do you have to move location? Whatever the case. And, that's a big investment and a big money spend, but think about the additional revenue if you could add a second laser or a second decompression. I mean, the added revenue and volume you could do and with those added pieces of equipment can amount to, over a few years, hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional revenue, even though, yeah, maybe you spend 100 or 200 or 300,000 on an addition, or upping rent to get more office space, whatever the case. Usually it's a worthwhile thing to do because your return on investment will be big time by getting new equipment. So I usually counsel doctors or tell doctors, just bite the bullet, spend the bucks, invest in the equipment, and you'll be rewarded for that, not only clinically, but financially as well.
Yeah, and I would just wrap it up with this, specifically to the space. One of our great clients, Dr. Michael Schaefer he's in Naples, Florida, and he was in a location that it wasn't necessarily cramped in terms of like the space, but it was not in a great part of town, and he did not enjoy going to the practice because he didn't like the business location. He didn't like what what it looked like, and he was very turned off by it. And I remember he came to the summit last year, and he was so unhappy. So in January, he started talking about, there's a new space that opened up. It's in a great location. It's not too far from my current location, so it wouldn't be. Anyways, it was this whole decision-making process. Do we make the move? And, I wasn't forking over the dough. He didn't buy it. Is leasing it. But the point being is, he looked at it from all angles, realized that, it's bigger, better location, and it's a beautiful office. And he made the decision. He moved. He's like a different doctor. He is so happy. He loves going to practice. So sometimes it's not necessarily a blockage in terms of like volume. It's if you don't like going to the location of your practice, you don't like the way it looks, and you really want to grow. I mean, you got to think out 10, 15 years, 20 years of just being unhappy in your current location. Sometimes you need to believe that, it will happen in a new location, even though there's more of an investment. But you have to be proud of where you're at and the location and what it looks like. If you're embarrassed or just, maybe it's in a bad part of town. More often than not, you will absolutely reap the rewards from making a move, even though it could be scary in the beginning.
100%, because it is scary. It's a leap of faith, but in any successful business, if you talk to any doctor or other professional that's in business, almost everyone will say that did something pretty well. I took a few risks along the way. They were calculated risks. They weren't blind faith risks, but at the same time, they had to step out and stick their neck out a little bit, and maybe they weren't 100% certain this was going to work, but they had a plan, and they put some faith into that, and they stuck their neck out a little bit. And more times than not, if you go at it with the right plan, the right intention, have some faith about it, those decisions will come back and they'll multiply and come back to you, and you'll look back and be like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. When I built my new clinic in 2010, it was and that when we got into that, it was my practice just exploded even above and beyond what I was at my other location just down the block here. And then when I built an expansion onto my new building in 2022, it was almost immediate. The surge of patients and the volume, and also the services we were able to do back there with the therapies and so forth, it all grew, and we're at 3,500 square feet. So now what I'm doing is I'm actually taking back my old office because I need more room again. And so all that to say, if you need more space, you need more space, and don't be afraid to do it, because sometimes that's the biggest blockage in a current practice.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And I like that point about, if you look at the people that are most successful, they took risks, the old saying is like, why do you go out on a limb? It's because that's where the fruit is. Right. So you're going to need to take some risks to grow. There's just no two ways about it. Okay. So I think that wraps things up. Hopefully this has been helpful. This has been Scaling Smart, the right time to add staff, systems, and technology, and space, I guess, now that we talked about the physical location. So we hope that has been helpful for you. Please make sure to share this with a colleague. And we have a new program here at Specialized Practice called the Decompression Accelerator. So if you are looking to add and grow spinal decompression, so this would be a doctor that has a table but hasn't really been able to make it work, or someone that is looking to add decompression. They see the value in it. They want to do it the right way from the get-go. Just go to decompressionaccelerator.com. You can find all about that. Awesome wisdom there, Dr. Kyle. Any last notes, thoughts, comments?
Well, we're all about helping doctors with decompression, neuropathy, chronic knee pain, adding niches. And this is where if you want to really grow a practice modern day that we are in, you gotta ditch the old model, and you have to embrace the model that can work today. Because as Dr. Vince and I've talked about, there's very little middle class chiropractors anymore. There's either the starving ones that are just getting by, and then there's a select few that are doing really well. And if you want to go from the starving one or the very few middle class ones to the ones that are doing really well, the model that Dr. Vince is bringing to our profession is the model to follow. That's what I would say.
I love it. There's always room at the top, but there's not that many people up there.
That's right.
And I think it goes back to like what you're saying is like, hey, just a matter of taking a little bit of risk. So anyways, hope this helps. And we'll see you guys all on the next episode of the Practice Builders Podcast. Take care. Hey, it's Dr. Vince again, and hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you're ready to grow your practice fast with high-value decompression patients, then the Decompression Accelerator could be a phenomenal option for you. This is our 90-day sprint to help you scale with proven systems, staff-driven protocols, and full marketing support, and it's all guaranteed. Spots are limited. Head to www.decompressionaccelerator.com to learn more.